Amazing. Well, we might just kick off. Afternoon, everyone. I've met a few of you there. My name is Eva Walsh. I'm one of the Workplace Strategy Associates here at Contour. Delighted you could all join us this afternoon and hope you enjoyed the food. There'll be some there afterwards, I'm sure, if anyone gets peckish. Really happy today to be joined by Ed Hill, one of the directors from JLL, who's going to chat us through the Melbourne commercial property market as it stands. And then we'll be moving on to Caroline Pickfance, our head of strategy here in Contour, who's going to talk about how the workplace can amplify your people's performance. And then we're also joined by Simon Blewett, our head of design here at Contour. So yeah, really great session. And if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to interrupt. We'll have a session at the end anyway to facilitate questions. But yeah, very casual session, so don't feel free to interrupt us. I might pass to yourself, Ed, if that's okay.
Do you want me to hold this and use the clicker? So I'll put this down.
Yeah.
Then I'll kick it over.
No,
it's
you're all
fine.
good.
Sorry. All good. Thanks, Contour, for having me as well. Appreciate that. And hello to everyone. As Eva mentioned, I'm Ed Hill, Director in the Tenant Representation Team at JLL. I think most of you probably wouldn't know me, but you may know some of my colleagues as well. So Peter Walsh, Kate Pilgrim, Jess Van Ray, I think some of you are actually doing work with or in discussions with at the moment about things. So nice to meet you all. I'm going to race through these first few slides because it's about the headline market data, which I'm pretty sure you've all been bombarded with emails or PDF decks and things like that covering off, and they talk about the 18% vacancy in the CBD and what the face rents are doing and things like that. What Docklands vacancy is looking like at 21%. So all this stuff is great, even the fringe and the southeast, and it's relevant, it's all true, but it's a bit too broad, and I don't think it tells the whole story of the Melbourne market. So what my intention is for this is to actually sort of delve into it a little bit. Basically, this is the equivalent of reading a blurb on the back of a book. Let's dive in and read some chapters. I promise I will not read chapters because I've got 10 minutes to get through all of it. So on the face value, I mean, you've all got at workplaces that have leases upcoming for expiry, and obviously you see the articles and things like that saying, you know, Melbourne's vacancy percentage, blah, blah, blah. And there might be sort of the view that, well, this is going to work brilliantly for us. We're going to have our, you know, pick of the litter to go to anything we want. We're going to be able to get red hot terms. This is where I think the broadness and of these sort of headline things can sort of lead you astray. So I want to dive into what it actually is, I suppose, really going on. Net absorption is strong in Melbourne over 2025. Great comment. We're only 6 months on. No, we're actually a bit longer that into it now, but this was done in sort of Q2, so it was only sort of capturing 6 months of data. So already we are sort of starting to see a bit of a comeback, and even going back 12 months, that vacancy percentage would have been about 20%, so it's already come back sort of 2%. So this is probably the first sort of layer of uncovering of what's going on. So, right, we are seeing sort of positive take-up of space. Vacancy improves in the CBD, as I said, we've just sort of closed that a little bit now too. So we are sort of creeping back below that 20% mark, and it's edging closer and closer and closer. Sublease vacancy stabilises. You may or may not be aware, Telstra sublet a whole bunch of space over the past 12 months. They essentially offloaded it outgoings only, to the point where people have almost been queuing out the door to say, we would like some more of that too. They've put that on hold at the moment, and I can say that because our team's been looking after it. So, but sublease vacancy as a whole across the CBD and southeast and CBD, because I think now you are seeing some direct space come available, which, you know, can compete a little bit with the sublease. The southeastern stuff is probably stabilising. My view is because people in the southeast know for a fact that it's not going to be in demand, so why bother? Not even going to put it on the market. So one of the key sort of themes or aspects to what the Melbourne market is doing is obviously supply. I'm sure you've all heard about the pipeline, what it's doing. Again, this is a good sort of overlay of it. 2020, we had over, you know, in the CBD, over 300,000 square metres of new space come to the market. You might recall what happened around that time. That is the absolute perfect storm to obviously create what we've been going through the past few years. And as a result, things are coming off. So is it coming off purely because there was a whole bunch of backfill supposed to fill up and it hasn't happened yet, so therefore there's no need to build forward? One part of it, but not the whole story. I'll draw you to this one as well. So pretty much everything in the front end of this graph is new developments with pre-commits. They are sort of taking up slowly a little bit. You can see 7 Spencer Street, which is one of the few, along with 51 Flinders, one of the few that sort of went ahead building without any pre-commitments. 7 Spencer Street's had some commitments to it. 51 Flinders is an East End premium grade building, very boutique bespoke. It's going to have take up, it won't be a problem. Then the next few are existing buildings vacancy. Already you can see that that's shrinking. I mean, there's only one there that's above 10,000 square metres of vacancy. Everything else beyond that is a who the hell knows. It might happen, it won't happen. One of the other reasons why we're not seeing development is obviously the economic part of it. I'll bring it back from a tenant leasing point of view when you're talking about doing fit outs. If you were to do in Sydney a 5-year lease term in a, let's call it a nice end of town, the incentive that you get proportionately, so it's a 35-40% incentive, probably be able to cover your fit out costs for that portion. No chance of doing that in Melbourne unless you're sort of looking at a 7-8+ year term commitment. That's also felt by the landlords developing these things. They need those high rents in order to get that. So we are already seeing the landlords are trying to push those rents up a little bit more so they can basically afford to go ahead with it. Otherwise, again, all that development pipeline is pretty much in the bank. This is a telling slide. Obviously, you've got sort of through the early 2000s. So that dotted line is what the Melbourne average in terms of supply to the market has been. It crept up again, obviously, with 2020 and that big sort of massive development cycle that we saw. That's going to be the result of no development pipeline. It's going to plummet. What is being built? These things, not many. Again, 5 years ago, there were red dots over this that looked like it was, I don't know, what, some sort of speckled, hundreds of thousands things. 435 Burke Street, Combank's pre-commitment to that. Baker McKenzie and I think Unisuper have committed to that as well. 299 Burke Street, you might have seen in the news lately, that's where Mecca's opened up, but there's some things with the landlord there. Bennett's Lane, they've actually cut that down to only 2 floors are going to be office, the rest of it's going to be sort of short-term accommodation stay. So that's an example of saying, well, and the developer themselves are in hospitality, so that's kind of their thing. 130 Little Collins is a strata, 85 Spring is still being refurbished, 51 Flinders I've mentioned, 415 Flinders Lane is just a little boutique building, and 7 Spencer is a spec building by Mirvac. This is what the actual pipeline looks like. As I said, everything that's currently being built is the only thing that's guaranteed to be built, although I've got pretty good mail, and you might hear about it soon. Town Hall Place, we believe, might be getting pulled. Yep. That's the one above the train station. Huh? So we've got, as I said, we've got pretty good mail that maybe that one's not, in which case that leaves CBRE trying to figure out a home, which, not petty, but so then there is this big pipeline that we talk about here. So none of this is assured because it relies on pre-commitment. There is a development gap. These are the types of groups, they're not the only ones, obviously, that are going to drive that next pipeline, what they need to go for. These ones are unlikely because they're sort of at the early stages of permits and things like that. I think that it's the same for the metro as well. I'd say it's even more uncertain because stuff changes day to day. It's an office building one day and it's going to be a residential apartment the next day. The other thing that's affecting the greening, everyone says ESG or sustainability, so this makes it easier. We're also seeing the rents come up. There's a direct correlation you can see between buildings with higher vacancy and lower green ratings. This is until I think there is more of a partnership with landlords and tenants about greenerising buildings. Landlords are going to take the view that's fine, we can do that, but you got to pay for it. And that's what we're saying. It's working for them because the vacancy in those buildings is reducing significantly. So again, that's another theme that's probably we're now seeing. I think once we got out of COVID, there was a lot of speculation about what was happening. This was going to happen, that was going to happen. It's only in the last probably 12 months, maybe 18, where we're actually starting to see the theories come to light, and this is probably a good one of it. I'll get to a slide at the bottom, but Melbourne, for the record, too. Sorry, go for it.
Is that consistent in all cities around Australia, or is that?
It's probably, I would say it's more severe in Melbourne because it's more difficult for buildings in Melbourne to get to the higher star ratings because of the grid that we operate on. So it's probably felt more here, particularly when you're dealing with large occupiers like government and things like that. Say, hey, we've got to be in a 6-star neighbours building. Well, guess what? There's only 2 buildings in the city that do that. Demand, which is probably where you come into it. So again, the best CBD assets in the building, in the CBD are filling up fast. That sort of graph on the right sort of illustrates that too. I've got a good sort of case study coming through at the end here, but this is again sort of just illustrating that. Think of it as if you go to the supermarket and you want to go pick out avocados and you've got to filter through the avocados. There's heaps of avocados there. Some are too soft, some are too hard, some are bruised, some are whatever. How long does it actually take you to find like, oh no, that's the one that I want? That's kind of where the market's at the moment. The 18% has got about 15% of rotten avocados in it, if you think of it that way. So we are saying this, yeah, I'm good with the analogies, don't worry. The CBD and fringe rental, so it is, we are seeing sort of it come open again, where the CBD is now sort of getting that demand into it and the rental coming up. It did close up a little bit when particularly the development cycle in the fringe, some of those sort of new shiny buildings came through and you know the rents that they were seeking there mirrored essentially what you got in the CBD. The CBD is now sort of kicking ahead again because of the ability to come into the CBD, centralise, and you'll talk about workplace in a second. I'll touch on it a little bit now. Utilisation. I'm going to relate this back to Sydney. So sorry, all these companies here, these are what they had as their mandated return to work things. The ones circled, the ones that have changed it, basically flipped on their head and said, actually, this is what we're going to do. The reason why I want to reference Sydney on this in terms of take up of space is because I think we will feel it here. We haven't yet, but I think we will to a degree, not to the severity, is Sydney's now going through a cycle where you had a lot of organisations aggressively hand back space, want to get out of space on the back of COVID, saying we've got to get everyone in. They're now in the predicament of, wow, everyone's coming back in. Actually, we need not only the space back, but we might need more space. So again, you're seeing that vacancy sort of get skewed and taken up and things like that. So yes, so that's obviously it's a bit of a messy slide, but just to give you an idea of the groups that have sort of realised that and been able to turn around and say, actually, you know, this isn't as severe as bad as we thought, and we do need to get it. Again, this sort of reflects that. This is Sydney on the right-hand side here. So this has got to do with tenants moving, and they're moving to either a large footprint, less footprint, or in the case of the grey, that's the number of sort of deals where it's a marginal change, if at any. Sydney, you can see, is growing. Melbourne is starting to balance itself out a little bit, you can see. Location. Where are we all moving to? So centralisation, again, groups wanting to come into the city versus going out. Really the only group in the last few years from a major point of view that's moved out into the suburbs was Australia Post, who moved out to Richmond from the CBD. There was a lot of philosophical sort of reasoning behind that because, you know, it had to do with wanting to sort of be viewed like we're ones with those that work in the depot and things like that. So having a CBD office probably doesn't marry up. Let's move out into the burbs. The jury is still out internally, I think, on how that worked for them. Other than that, there is still that centralisation, so much so that we've had Coles recently move into the CBD. They'll be going into the old Medibank building at 720 Burke Street, coming out from the Taronga Business Park. So there is still very much that centralisation piece here. That just gives you sort of an idea as to where they're going to. Unsurprisingly, you're having quite a few come off St Kilda Road, which I think might get to on the back of this. One of the other things sort of driving it too is Melbourne, or sorry, Victoria, is putting more into its infrastructure than any other state in the land. So On the back of that, are we seeing the Metro Tunnel having an effect on St Kilda Road? This is obviously saying that there is a portion of, St Kilda Road that's taking up that space and having a bit of a revival. That's probably will keep that part of St Kilda Road alive. This part of St Kilda Road is already struggling. What that's not going to necessarily do in the short term, it obviously will open up the vacancy in St Kilda Road, already has. A lot of that stuff's going to come off the market anyway. So that's going to dilute that vacancy pool completely, because that's pretty much all primed for residential redevelopment. So yes, you are seeing some groups, move to that Anzac, but it's not as though it's pulling people out of the CBD to go there. Not even from Richmond, maybe from the southeastern suburbs, but it's actually a lot of these groups as well moving up into there. So the reality, I just want to finish on this because how do I go for 10 minutes? Yeah, okay. 20? Jeez, right, okay. I'll just sort of give, so this is a brief kind of example of what we had with a client last year, or sorry, 2 clients. So they both had requirements for, one had 1,000 square metres, one had 3,000 square metres. Both said they want to be in the CBD. We've got 146 options submitted and 93 options. Sounds great. Then we delve further into what their requirements were. They need to be in a prime grade, dilutes from 81 to 67. They need to be East End in the Parliament or Eastern Core, 1311. Neighbours, 4-2. Collins Street, none. Referred build since 2020, none. That's what you'll find on the journey. So don't get misled by this 18%, because once you actually get your hands into it, there's not that much going on. And it relates to, even if you need to want to renew or stay put, you are having a lot of the landlords knowing that, well, compared to what you're in, I know there's nothing out there that's really a threat to me losing you. So that sort of earlier engagement piece as well is key. I've taken up way too much time, so sorry.
Well, that's okay. You've been excellent, Ed. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'll pass over to Caroline. I'll just move this for you, Carol.
Oh, static. Does this clip on?
No, oh yeah, I think it does. Or you can just hold it. Yeah, but it can clip either. Yeah, excellent.
Thumbs up? Okay. So, thank you. All right, I'm going to stand up because I think better on my feet. Okay, so mostly what I'm going to talk about today is the impact of work design or workplace design on business performance, first and foremost. But just a super quick introduction to Contour for those of you who don't know. This is an example of our approach where we really focus on a deeply integrated methodology for delivering high performance workplaces. I'm the head of the strategy and change team, so you can see that's the red there. We're kind of engaged throughout the whole life cycle of the project, and we work very closely with Simon in design. And then we have progressive costing that happens at the same time before we head into delivery. Just a quick background for me, I've really specialised my career in helping organisations really leverage the most from their workplace. That really means working with leadership teams to help them get the most out of it in particular. A couple of interesting projects. Most recently was perhaps Chevron, which was with out in WA, where they moved from 5 different workplaces into a single tower for about 45,000 square metres. They were really interested in bringing I guess more visibility and connection across the different silos within the organisation to deliver value. Perhaps the fastest growing organisation I've worked with was with Google in the UK, where they were growing their headcount at 88% a year. It was unprecedented. It was back in 2005-06 where they were, I guess, moving their headquarters to Dublin, where Eva hails from, to take advantage of their favourable corporation tax. And then at the moment, we're working with an organisation here in Melbourne where they specialise in medical and health, both products and services, and they're struggling in a meaningful way about getting people back into the workplace. They've got very, very low attendance rates, so that's their biggest challenge. Okay, so I'm going to talk. I can't really talk about the impact of office design on the future of work, on business performance, without talking about the future of work. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll wrap up with a couple of tips on how you might go about quantifying future space. So obviously we can't predict the future, but we can absolutely understand the factors influencing it. How do you like my AI-generated binoculars? So let's talk about technology first and foremost. I'm not going to cover all these things. This is a whole talk we could do just on its own. But actually, I'm just going to talk about technology and demographics in particular. Technology first and foremost. Can I just see a show of hands? Who here uses AI every single day in your work processes? All right, keep your hands up. Now, if you are a millennial or a Gen Z, put your hands down. Who's left? Okay, that's respectable. I'm going to say a fifth of you. Spoiler alert, get to know how to use AI. There's generative AI, that's ChatGPT that you've heard about. Has anybody heard of agentic AI, the agents? Anybody used it? Fantastic. I want to hear all about that later. Just to give you, those of you who are not sure of it, agentic AI is basically an AI agent that can take action on your behalf. And ChatGPT 5 was rolled out yesterday, this week, like right now. And so AI agents are here as of right now. So that's my mission, to figure out how can I leverage the AI agent. Just to give you a quick example, you can say something like, I'm going to have a dinner party tomorrow, come up with here's the people coming, come up with a menu, order all the food I need from Woolies and have it delivered. And then, you've got a menu ready to go when you start cooking. So it'll stop and say, here, input your credentials to pay for the shopping, but other than that, it will do everything for you. It's mind-blowing. The thing is how rapid, generative AI in itself is only 2.5 years old. It came out when we were trying to figure out how to unmute on Zoom calls during COVID. And so it's absolutely going to revolutionise the way knowledge work's done in particular. Actually, there's quite a bit of research predicting how much knowledge work is going to be disrupted by AI as we go along. And they reckon it's in the order of 90% of tasks of all AI work is going to be disrupted. That has an impact over the different types of occupations, of course. I'm already hearing stories about particularly tech companies who are hiring less tech grads because the AI can do it already. So it's going to have a profound impact on the future of work and therefore the workplace. So it's rewiring how we think and collaborate and how we generate value. We will all have our own AI agents, I would predict, very soon. So really what it means then is the type of work that we do is going to change, or certainly the type of skills that are valued are going to be slightly evolving. The things that are more difficult to automate. And those skills are more like empathy, judgment, ethics, things like complex problem solving, where you bring a lot of disparate groups of people together and really try and solve problems together, but of course leveraging and working with AI. I think this is a super fascinating disruption that's coming. I said this the other day, I'm equal parts excited and terrified about what's possible. So then let's move on to the workforce demographics. I'm sure many of you are aware at the moment the Australian workforce in particular is shrinking. There's more boomers retiring than the younger generations to replace them. There's something called the old age dependency ratio, which is that we get from a report from the OECD that came out in May of 23. And basically, within 2025, for every 100 Australians in the age group of the workforce, and they call that 15 to 65, anyway, it's quite a broad range, there is currently 29 people who are not working, who are retired, who are depending on those of us who are working. But that is significantly changing, and they predict by 2060, it's basically for every 100, there's 47 retirees. It's basically half the size of the workforce in retirement. So this is why the war for talent is only going to get tougher, notwithstanding the impact that AI is having on jobs. So these are two compounding things. So there's going to be fewer people to do the work. There's going to be greater competition for talent, and it's going to push a real emphasis on the productivity of each and every one of us moving forward. So of this size of the different generations, what's really important is that it's the workforce is getting younger. So the millennials and the Zs are today in Australia about 65% of the workforce. That's shifting by 2030, it's going to be more like 75%. And so, of course, millennials and Gen Zs bring quite a different way in terms of how they collaborate, how they learn, how they are motivated, what they find important to how they form an attachment or an engagement with the organisations that they work for. This is a generation that will live at home for longer until they get a job that they really want to do. And so the things that they find really important are things like mentoring and training, particularly from their leadership team, guidance, that kind of thing. But it's also about having meaningful work, doing something that has a purpose for how they work. But then also that sense of autonomy and connectedness with the people that they work with. All things that are important when it comes to thinking about how the workplace can help kind of underline and support this. Of course, the economic uncertainty doesn't appear to be improving anytime soon, and when periods of economic uncertainty happen, then organisations are really forced at re-evaluating things like efficiency, agility and resilience. These become really important in terms of how the business needs to operate. Capital decisions are being really scrutinised. There's a lot more emphasis on the cost-value relationship between any kind of spend, and so being able to justify how the workplace can really amplify people's performance, I think, speaks very much to this in particular. Okay, so let's move on to how the workplace can help. I'm going to talk through, look, there's a whole bunch of different aspects that contribute to business performance. I'm literally just going to talk about 5 of them so that I don't blow through the time. I'm going to kick, it wasn't a dig, I promise. Oh, so funny. Okay, let's do the top 5 things that have the most impact, I guess. So the first one, of course, is engagement and retention, because we know how expensive it is to recruit and replace people who leave. The other thing about attraction and retention is that in a knowledge environment, an organisation's, I guess, knowledge is often their competitive advantage, and that's often tied up in key individuals within that organisation. So that knowledge is tacit, and you're at risk of losing it if you lose your key people. So making sure you keep a hold of the right people moving forward is important. Also considering what we're talking about in terms of the generations that are retiring, people will want to stay around a little bit longer because of cost of living. So if you're encouraging the older generation to stay longer, that's another way of really emphasising that the role that the workplace has in bringing that knowledge and keeping it within the organisation. Increasingly, businesses are relying on discretionary effort, and people who are more engaged in an organisation and bring their own discretionary effort often have a bigger impact on business performance at the end of the day. So being able to make sure you can support people's autonomy, their competence and their sense of relatedness all contributes to that. But how can the workplace help? So really having a space that's authentic and welcoming and that people want to be in does start to help. But actually it's around having fit for purpose types of settings. So where you need to concentrate, there's somewhere to do that. It's removing the friction of getting work done in particular. And all types of settings or aspects that really help drive that organisational culture or the workplace experience that is often talked about in this day and age. So of course communal spaces and social spaces really contribute to that, as do having wellness facilities. And wellness facilities doesn't just mean like a yoga room, it also means somewhere to think and take some downtime when you need to. Learning and development's another key one. Obviously, if knowledge is tacit and it's a competitive advantage, growing and spreading and deepening the awareness of what others are doing in the organisation is a really important part of learning and development. It's a key aspect for attraction and retention, particularly of Gen Z. One of the things they talk about is that real need or desire for guidance and mentoring in particular. And the skills realignment piece comes back to that technology change. So like learning to work alongside technology is a critical one, but also the Gen Zs and millennials recognise that they need to develop their soft skills, the things that are not as easily replicated by AI in particular. And of course, it supports a succession planning for your leadership team. So having versatile learning spaces that are able to adapt and change as the way in which we learn changes. Apparently, we're all going to have our own AI agent, as I said, who's going to know what you need to learn, when you need to learn it, and give it to you real time. That might become annoying, but that's what they say. Creating knowledge hubs, so that's like innovation centres, brainstorming areas, anywhere where you can really start to get learning and development happening. Think about putting leadership teams in a place where they're visible and they can coach and mentor the younger people around them in a really easy, kind of fluid fashion. Innovation and growth. Innovation capability is one of the things I see time and time again about organisations pursuing this in the pursuit of improving performance. It makes you more resilient. It makes you more, I guess it's good for your long-term viability, because as things change, you're able to adapt and pivot as an organisation generally. And of course, the enhancing profitability comes down to ideas and speed to market, whether or not you can come up with more different products and skills and services that you can be selling. How you support innovation and growth is not a cookie cutter effect. You really need to understand what is the type of innovation that you're trying to support in the first place and encourage. But there's some key kind of generic factors that we think really contribute to it. One of them is about having really good cross-functional teams. People know who's who in the zoo and who's good at what, so that you can approach and get in touch with them. Places that encourage creativity, like those brainstorming and innovation hubs we talked about. Having really good collaboration and problem-solving culture. So that comes down to not just the physical space for it, but also the digital capability that will help you be able to leverage people who are not physically located in your state, so that you can bring people from different disparate backgrounds together live to collaborate. Knowledge sharing is obvious, but also the dynamic and the biophilic design, that's all about creating, you think differently in a different environment. It gives you the different type of headspace, doesn't it? So really having an intentional approach to targeting what type of headspaces do we need to really build on. Resilience again. So obviously we talked a bit about this in the innovation piece. So around minimising disruption, your ability to pivot and change very quickly. Of course, all of this contributes to building stakeholder confidence at the end of the day, which often boils down to trust that you are able to respond and adapt quickly. Ways in which you can facilitate this is really much through flexibility is key, and that's not just through flexibility in terms of the types of spaces that you put in, but also how you might occupy space. So what proportion of the population really needs to be in an enclosed office and anchored behind a closed door, versus are there target groups that could work in a much more fluid and flexible way. Having the right tools really helps. Creating a sense of community is really important for resilience. Creating a sense of we are all in this together. The more you like and are feeling supportive of your colleagues, the more likely you are to rise to the occasion and really try and dig in to get through diversity or when things change. Operational efficiency. This is often the first thing that everybody thinks about when they think, how can the workplace help? Take up less space, spend less money. But actually it's really about improving the output of each individual and making sure that you can, you do reduce costs in terms of how expensive it is to run, but underlining it all is boosting the productivity of your people in particular. So look at space utilisation, what spaces are not used and could be repurposed for a better use. I often see organisations have very large meeting spaces, but then when we go in and study them, they basically meet 4 people or less. So you've got all these huge rooms sitting empty or with 1 or 2 people in them. Embracing flexibility, again, not just on having flexible, adaptable, multi-purpose spaces, that's a good place to start, but also on how you assign people to space is one to consider. And there's a whole broad range that we can talk about how you might go about doing that. Having task-specific settings, that's specifically about removing the friction. You know how hard it is when you're trying to work quickly and to a deadline and you just can't get a meeting room, or you just can't concentrate because there's nowhere to focus. Typically what we're seeing at the moment is there's not enough quiet rooms in workspaces now that everything's done on Teams and Zoom, and so you're doing that at your desk and now it's a noisy environment and you just can't get anything done, from thinking perspective, so you do it from home. And that just amplifies this problem of not getting people into the office. So I started to talk about 5, but here's a bonus. I just wanted to put your hands up. Have you heard of psychosocial safety before? Only a few of us. Okay, so the WorkSafe has brought out a new regulation. Actually, it's effective in Queensland, WA and South Australia. Victoria starts this year in December, 1st of December. And it's essentially saying that organisations are as responsible for the psychological safety of their people as they are for their physical safety. The same impacts and penalties apply. Which, I mean, that's tough, right? How do you stop that? So there's a whole series of areas of focus that they're looking at: job design and workload, so overloading people, managing burnout, being aware of what that looks like and providing opportunities to stop it. But the reporting systems in particular are changing with a focus on early intervention. This is something to watch because it is coming, and it is already in a lot of the other states, and it does have some profound impacts. So what can the workplace do about it? Well, to some degree, a lot of it comes down to the organisational policy. That's where you'll have to start to address these issues. But there are things in terms of supporting your ability in terms of your autonomy and choice, giving you the choice to do things. That helps with stresses. If you can't focus at your desk, if you do have the capacity to get up and go someplace that you can, that in itself is something that contributes to it. It's also about lessening the environmental stresses. It's not too noisy, it's not overcrowded, it's not too hot or too cold, all those things that just add a bit of drag on your day and your mental capability, but really having a culture of care. So that comes down to your social spaces again, and the protocols that you put in place to really help have an organisation come together and be supportive of each other. I think one of the biggest things everyone can do is make sure you have enough places to concentrate, because that's one of the biggest stresses when it comes to trying to get work done to deadlines. Okay, so let's just talk super quick on how you might go about predicting how much space you need in the future, which is quite a complex jigsaw puzzle. We have something that we call the High Performance Workplace Framework. Yes, I'm sorry, we have hit 1, so if there's a few of you that do need to dash.
Sorry again.
It's JLL's fault. Honestly, I've got 2 more slides, so I'll do this real quick. There's understanding the behavioural environment is the place to start, because if you acknowledge how much behaviour capability and engagement and your people's alignment contribute to business performance, understanding what that is first, and then building the spaces and the digital support around it is really what the aim is all about. And how do you do that? Well, you need to get in there and do a combination of qualitative and quantitative research. This is an example where each individual bar is an individual work point, so it's either a desk or an office. The blue is somebody physically present at the desk. The light blue is somebody's here, but like somebody's in the office but not sitting at their desk. Our desks right now will look like that. And then the grey is completely empty. In this organisation, which I mentioned earlier, that are having trouble getting people in, if we drew a line across the 25% or less people sitting at the desk, 50% of the population look like that. 50% of the population are at their desk for less than or around about a day a week. So there's a real opportunity to do something with that. Now, on the one hand, pre-COVID, you'd go, great, let's just get rid of half the desk. We'll all desk share and we'll get a whole load of, bean bags. But actually for these guys, they want people to come into the office more. So desk sharing might not be the answer for them if they want people to come in. The other thing is to look at the meeting patterns. As I said earlier, time and time again, I see giant rooms, small meetings. So these are all the meeting rooms from 4P up to the 10s, 15s, 10, and another 10 down the back there. The colour represents what size groupings are in there. So the light blues and greens are all 1 person, 2 person, 3 or 4 person meetings. So you can see the overwhelming majority of meetings, so 74% of them were for 4 people or less, yet all these rooms are giant. So that's a really clear way to improve efficiency, firstly, but also, look at all the 1 person use and 2 person use of those large rooms. They need focus rooms. They need somewhere to think and concentrate. Understanding your people's perspective is really important, and I would urge you to ask them, don't just guess what you think it is. So thinking about what aspects of the workplace are really important. We ask this question to pretty much all our clients and all our workforces that we come into contact with, and the ability to concentrate without interruption is universally at the top. The opportunity for learning and development, that's higher up depending on the age of the organisation. The younger they are, the higher that measure is. But it's all things to do with quiet social connectedness and collaboration and learning and development. The other thing we can look at is, and again, this is the same organisation's data where we said, okay, they had a policy of we want people in 3 days a week. We asked the staff, how often do you come in? And not only how often do you come in, how much would ideally you like to come in to get a scale of the problem. Well, we saw that they weren't coming in more than half of them were coming in for a day if you were lucky. So let's say that 80% were coming in for 2 days a week. The mandate was 3 days a week. They self-reported, that's the light blue, and the dark blue is ideal. So they're self-reporting, they mainly come in between 2 to 3 days a week, but ideally, like a lot of them are saying they want to come in 1 day a week. So that says they're not coming in, they're not quite coming into the mandated rules, and worse than that, they don't want to come in that much. So it's a significant issue to deal with. So then we say, okay, well, what factors influence your decision to come in or not? And we can kind of map that out. And there's a whole list of things there around collaborating with peers, better focus and productivity, ergonomics, the commute times in there. So it's a really good profile to see what is it specific to your individuals, your people, that we can address. So in summary, consider the future because it's changing. Please, if you haven't, go and learn how to use an AI agent because that's next. Plan for change and disruption because if there's one thing the last 5 years has taught us is that that is here to stay and will continue at a crazy rate. Engage with your high potential people. If that's where the knowledge in your organisation sits, you want to keep them. So do consider engaging with them. Ground your decisions in evidence and insight, as we just talked about. Don't just guess because what you think, particularly if you being the executive team is an X or a boomer, we don't really know what the next incoming generation truly want. And then make timely decisions and leave them to the last responsible minutes. Thank you. Any questions?
Feel free. We completely understand everyone's got busy diaries, but do people have time maybe for a few questions? Or yeah, okay, great. No one's dashing out of the room, so that's good. Maybe just to kick us off, Carol, I might ask you a question based off the back of the presentation, and especially what you were saying there in the last slide, where you're talking about if you're the exec team, we don't really know what's going on, I guess, with the lay people or the lay persons.
The young persons.
The young persons. When you're having these conversations with leadership or the C-suite, and you're talking about how the workplace can be used as a tool to really amplify business performance, what do you think is something that often gets overlooked in those discussions?
Okay, I would say underestimating the impact space has on behaviour. That's probably the biggest thing that's overlooked. Often they're like, okay, we're too busy, we'll just talk to the exec team and we know what we want and we'll just go. A few people nodding, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's underrating that impact that it has. So yeah, I guess I often talk to organisations about, firstly, how well can you predict your headcount growth over the life of the lease? And no one can do that very accurately in this day and age. And then what age and demographic are they? And that gives us some good clues too then as to the difference between the exec team's view on how things might be versus what it could well be in reality.
I guess probably trying to get people to look past it just being a real estate decision, which is, sorry, we're sharing the mic. Can't even remember, it goes this way. Yes?
Have your clients that you're dealing with on return to office, I don't know how many of them are having this challenge, but all of them, right? What are some examples of strategies they're using to try and get people back?
Okay,
pass
Yeah,
back.
great. Well, I'll talk about that example we were just looking at where, you know, the pre-COVID response to that data would have been, we'll start desk sharing because they just don't need all their space. It's acres of empty space. But as a result of understanding that we really need to get people back in, that clearly wasn't the right approach to take. These guys are not young, actually, because they're, I guess they're medical and safety experts, often come out of careers as a nurse or a doctor or in safety as
Fire
fires
safety
and
and
mining, yeah. So they're kind of more in the, let's call, well, they're still, I guess, millennials because they'd be in their sort of 35, 45 kind of area. So we had quite a lot of engagement with the whole, like a cross-section of the whole organisation actually, to really drill down into what was really particular for them. Places to think was the biggest problem. We got a quote from one of the surveys that said, if I am not able to concentrate at work, I'm going to do it from home, and we need to talk about the working from home policy. And so we said, okay, well, that's an easy fix. We just need to have more places to think than we ever have before. As a general rule, I like to, in this day and age, work to 1 to 15, which is quite a lot. So 1 quiet room for every 15 staff that you have. So that was the first thing. The second thing was to do with the social space, which is what we're working through at the moment, isn't it? And having a truly engaging, rich environment where people want to come together. It's a bit like FOMO, you know, having a place where people really enjoy being. So on the one side, there's creating that really kind of comprehensive social space. They've got workers, they've got people who work in like a, well, it's called a workshop, but what would you call it? Like a labs and testing material, equipment and things. And then they've also got a warehouse. So they've got quite a broad spectrum of types of people who work there. So getting everybody together in this really kind of great central social area is important. But overlaid over the top of that has to be the sort of social engineering activities that the HR team are going to put into place. So events and functions and get-togethers that really create that sense of people wanting to come in. I would say that perhaps one of the biggest problems that most of our clients face when we talk to them is the capability of middle managers to manage to outcome. That's one of the biggest problems because it's just so much easier to go get in, or I don't believe you're working.
Yeah, if I can't see you, you don't exist.
And you're not working.
Yeah, I have the same problem.
Yeah.
Like that middle line where
they're
very used to in-person.
Development,
Right.
because
But conversely, you need it for the grads and the interns because without them being in the office, they're not learning anything.
No, that's right, exactly.
And you don't know that they don't know things either.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know that they don't know things.
Well, exactly. We're working with another organisation that are electrical engineers. The majority of the knowledge is held in probably about, 25 or 30 very senior, very experienced electrical engineers. All boomers, all South African boomers. Let me rephrase that. All South African male boomers, but that's another story. Anyway. But as a result, the grads, like they have a structured mentor program. But the biggest challenge that the South African boomers are saying is that they do not have time because they're so overloaded with work to mentor, and they're currently sitting in enclosed offices with doors. So that's the thing that they're looking at changing, is not fully enclosed, like having offices with doors, but they're all glass now, or out of the that doesn't. Look, it depends on the industry. It doesn't work for lawyers. It doesn't work for engineers, but it does work for. Yeah, right. But if you're in software development, absolutely. UX design, customer design, sales and marketing, any kind of creative industry, that absolutely works. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Precisely. Yeah. Oh yes, down the back.
Just probably combining the two presents. Are you seeing, say, location? Organisations being a lot more specific about the locations and the surrounding amenities they want, because you can't design your way out.
Yeah, paramount. There's a massive thing about amenities going on. Of like, you need to give them another reason to go into. So we worked with Allianz a few years ago. They were at Melbourne Central Tower, which, on its own is an okay building, but it is a little bit isolated away. to the point where they had someone come in and they picked up on the 555 Collins Street development with all the bells and whistles that thing's got, which is very impressive. They were of a view that this is what we need to get people back, because they just become decimated after COVID. They couldn't get anyone back in. So yeah, that's a good example of it.
Have you seen much of a shift into more of a hybrid model?
Yeah. Thank you. Look, I'm going to say yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me start with the no.
Yes, let's
The hybrid model has been around for decades. In 2005 is when I started desk sharing. In 2005, we didn't have iPhones in 2005. We kind of had a laptop, it was very heavy, but yeah. So it was a brick, yeah. So that's been changing, particularly the large professional services firms have been doing it for years, right? Now that COVID hit, it thrust this idea of hybrid working into the mainstream. And so in that regards, it's more talked about now, and every organisation's at least asking the question, is this relevant for us or not? I mean, it's not always relevant for everybody. So, but the hybrid model of working from home versus working from the office, which is different from the hybrid model of collaborating with organisations that have offices interstate and overseas, and so therefore have to work with this distributed workforce generally. They're the kind of two biggest differences. But the attraction into the office is very geographically influenced. When we talk to Queensland and WA,
They didn't have the same experience.
they're like, what problem? No, I think Queensland got locked down for 3 days.
Yeah. And they're like, it's fine. And we're like, oh, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Homeschooling as
So
well.
so certainly Vic and New South Wales, Adelaide's somewhat in the middle. They're kind of drifting away from the office, just sort of as a natural thing because it's happening. Yeah, yeah, right. Drifting to outside. Yeah, I personally have a view that I'm somewhat against mandating, because if you mandate, you have to measure, but also talking about the war for talent and wanting a discretionary effort,
And
motivated.
Autonomy, you want choice, right?
Yeah, so if you're going to give discretionary effort, you're autonomous already. You are well connected to your network and your peers and your industry, and you are also working at your competency level that is enough that challenges you, but not so much that overwhelms you. If you want that individual in your workplace and you say you must work in the office 5 days a week, what do you think is going to happen?
It doesn't work. In what we've seen, it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
It's the teenager effect. It's like, I want to do against what you're telling me.
Yeah, they're like, all right then, I'll go find somebody else. And honestly,
You set a boundary, I don't know.
yeah. So if you create an environment that encourages it, that you create a culture that people feel like they're missing out if they're not there, a culture that knows how to manage and to reward your attendance, that's what's going to get people to come in a way that they're choosing to come in. Okay, thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you.
So,
Yes.
more of an opinion than a question.
Great, share it.
The definition. So the definition of hybrid, first of all, if you asked 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers. So it's a weird question to say, do they work hybrid? I see job ads and all refer to hybrid. What is hybrid? Like, first of all, right? I'm going to say something I said to you earlier around like the best thing to return to office is not mandates, it's a recession. I guarantee if we had a recession, you'd see a very different attitude because it's a balance of power.
Oh, yes.
So
it's going to be easier to keep someone on that you see every day.
Yeah. Where we should strive towards is not about decisions, personal decision, team decision. It should be about like, you get a salary. What do you need to do to earn that salary? And how do you, the competition for talent, right? Through recession, their talents are different things. Suddenly, it's about like I don't know. To me, it's a very simple answer. Is like, how do you best do your job? Yeah. Now, historically, we've looked at leadership for that, right? Execs, the board, the senior leadership teams. They drove the strategy of the company. They drive the direction of the company, rightly or wrongly, it doesn't matter. but that's the structure of organizations. We should allow that to do it and decide for itself. And we refer to hybrid. I'm going back to 2006 in the UK. We took Eversheds out of offices, lawyers, out of office shed, and we're talking of tens of thousands of square meters. We took them out of offices. It was a leadership decision. It wasn't a work decision about, that's how lawyers do it, because that was the culture. We took them out. Their productivity went up, their delivery went up, their market share went up, their real estate costs went down because of a decision. So the decision was around the right decision, not around what's good for individual, but it was good for the company that pays you.
Yeah, that's right. But it comes with a whole set of skill sets, doesn't it? That comes with a whole new set of skills, like we were talking about earlier. The middle management need to know how to manage people irrespective of where they are.
Do not know how to do it in hybrid.
No, they don't. No, they're notoriously bad at it. Yeah.
I would say on that point, though, I think the change has gone through incredibly. If you plan that in 2018, the amount of support structure that you would put around people and change management and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of organisations went overnight, okay, new technology, this is how we work now, this is how we do meetings.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Yeah.
Why isn't it working?
Yeah.
It was sort of, you didn't have the lead-in, but that's the reality if you think about the extent of the change.
Which is quite funny, because I'm like you, for the last 15, 20 years, I've been saying, why are we still mandating, why do we have to be here? I have technology around me, I can be anywhere. I can talk to you from across the world. Why can't I be in the same city as you and work where works for me? So my organisation, thankfully, was in a unique position. We were already global, so we already had technology.
So you're already
for
working.
everybody to
Yeah.
pack up and go home. They already had their laptops in their bags.
Yeah.
So for us, it was a matter of deploying equipment for home office and
Yeah.
making sure that people were safe working from home.
Yeah.
But in terms of being able to just pivot that way, we were fortunate. We were fortunate. But also hierarchically, I'm seeing even big organisations, as hierarchical as they are starting to flatten.
That's true.
And that's with AI.
Yes, exactly.
And agents, I was watching a podcast this morning on my way in. Oh my Lord, my head exploded. I have more questions than answers.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
But also,
yeah.
give us 5 to 7 years. These jobs that some of the processes that we do as workplace people.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree.
It'll
Entirely. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm so for it, because I could do with a break.
Well, I mean, I'm an exer, right? And I'm like, thank goodness it's now, because it means there's only, I don't know, what am I going to work another 10 years or something? But it's the younger generation, the millennials and the Zs and the alphas who are not out of school yet. I worry about. Yeah. Teach them to become plumbers, electricians, like
everything will be VR.
Or software security, maybe. Yeah. Anyway.
The reality is amazing.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry that we weren't over, but that was a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
I love it.
Sorry, you're looking for
Just anywhere to sit.
Yeah, I can show you. Yeah, no, no, I can show you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Lovely. Thank you. Thanks for